Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you 10 things, all from my book that I published. It's a pretty interesting flip through. It shows me facing violence, prison, and being falsely committed to an institution in that order for a little over a decade. The 10 things I'm going to show you with documents from my book, emails, court records, pictures, receipts, police reports, letterhead from the district attorney's office. Every document is beyond valid. First thing I'm going to show you is an illegal eviction by the Concord Police Department that was covered up as a random felony criminal incident. Second thing I'm going to show you is my mother and how she cooperated with the police and their false reporting on the illegal eviction, because the allegations against me concealed her child abuse of my sons, which is the exact reason I rented the home in Concord. I'm going to show you assault with a deadly weapon as the third thing that was coordinated by the Concord Police Department and the San Francisco Police Department when I pursued the Concord Police Department to expose their illegal eviction cover-up. The fourth thing I'm going to show you is how I was set up for prison after I collected illegally redacted police reports, documents from the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office, and documents from the Concord Police Records Department that proved the illegal eviction cover-up. The fifth thing I'm going to show you is how the courts tried to have me committed for standing my ground and bringing an affidavit of a retired FBI agent on gang stalking to a hearing. The sixth thing I'm going to show you is the second time the court tried to have me committed, and they succeeded to misdiagnose me and have me committed to an institution with persecutory delusions, and how I got it overturned. The seventh thing I'll show you is after they failed to have me committed, they tricked me into leaving the courtroom to schedule a surprise non-jury trial. The eighth thing I'm going to show you is how after I stood my ground for 6 years in and out of court facing trap after trap, they gave up the day we had to set for a jury trial because they couldn't face a jury. The ninth thing I'm going to show you is the crimes that I faced to stop me from filing civil suits and remind me that I was still under their thumb after the case ended. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the current insurance fraud that I'm dealing with right now. RA and Associates knows about this video, so to wrap up their fraud without fully exposing themselves, they gave me the lowest offer possible, and I took it to get out of my contract. They originally intended to give me nothing. I do not exaggerate when I say that for the last 13 years, not a single person has helped me. That's because I'm a victim of gang stalking. Every single day, the police, the criminal justice system, and other ranking citizens violate poor people, sometimes accidentally, but more often with intent. Sometimes it rises to the level of a crime or a civil suit. If that crime or lawsuit is serious enough, the claimant will be examined for 3 specific qualities: impoverished, isolated, and susceptible to psychological abuse. If the claimant meets these conditions, they become a victim of this system. Every victim receives unique abuse tailored to what hurts them most. The only report I found online was taken from me by the courts when I was arrested for merely possessing it, and when I was released a month later, I could no longer find it online. It was a detailed report stating exactly what I said, but the details I remember are so horrific and large in scale, I will not speak on that here. I just know that they saved the government billions in lawsuits and scandals by torturing people like me all around the country without pause or mercy. I will only speak on my experience. The report I read stated the goal is to erase targets through death, prison, or having them institutionalized. I have endured multiple attempts at all 3. In these 10 steps, you will see the violence, false charges, and efforts to not merely drive me insane, but actually have me committed. I have spent the last 2 months making versions of this video that ran almost 2 hours, so I had to find a presentation style that allowed me to abbreviate it. I wrote a book that has the evidence from 2013 to 2024. The links to every piece of evidence I present is in the descriptions. Now I'm going to show you how they selected me for this program and how they cycled me through the attempted murder, false charges, and misdiagnosis to bury me in jail. Step 1. The illegal eviction that put the entire Concord Police Department at risk of a huge lawsuit for conspiracy under color of law. That is when a crime is committed by individuals using the resources and powers of law enforcement. This is how I was selected to be put on this list. These are the pieces of evidence that you can find in the descriptions under Step 1. I had a lease. I had text messages showing that I was already planning to move out in 2 months because it wasn't working. I have a receipt from my complaint to Internal Affairs about the police stalking and harassing me. The numbers below the receipt is the license plate from an off-duty cop that I caught outside the home with a flashlight at 5 a.m., leading to a confrontation that ended when they tried to ram my car once they got trapped at a dead-end cul-de-sac. I have pictures of the people the police were hoping to illegally evict me, replacing items in the home to make it look like they lived there. It was the plan they came up with the police to make it look like they lived there as owner-operators to simplify the illegal eviction fraud. I have another picture of them removing the phones because that's how I caught them. My kids called me at work and told me that they broke in, so they wanted to ensure I was not warned the next time. I have the receipt from the internet and phone service I replaced after they had that cut off as well. They wanted to make sure my kids couldn't contact me the next time they came. The next time the police and family came together, and my 9-year-old recorded them on a cell phone that wasn't activated, so he could only record video, and I have a picture of that. There's a picture of the officer noticing my son recording and taking the phone from my son, from his POV. Literally, it's a picture of the officer reaching at him to take the phone. I have 2 different versions of the redacted falsified report from the illegal eviction. This was an unofficial fraudulent report, and they could not remember what they wanted redacted, so the 2 versions reveal slightly different information, but it's all false. I have a letter from the Contra Costa District Attorney's Office proving that this was never a real criminal matter. The felony allegations in the illegal eviction report were never forwarded to the district attorney for charges because their police work was criminal activity that cannot hold under legal scrutiny. I have the report from the Concord Police Department Records Department stating that they have no 911 calls. My sons and I called 911 dozens of times and they just erased it from the system. I went to get a copy of the police report 2 months after the October illegal eviction in December, and they told me it wasn't done, but they gave the reports I already discussed to my mother 2 years later, and they had the same date as the eviction. So the reports were done and spread the same night, but I was denied for years, having to wait till my mother secured them for me because she has rights and I don't. The law states that you have to provide a reason for your redactions in a report. Entire paragraphs and over half of most pages are missing. And the reason for the redaction is to conceal the identity of minors. I have that in Concord Police Department letterhead. The entire missing paragraphs and the written reason for the redactions prove everything. The police even falsified a police report from the Major Crimes Unit claiming that I was sending death threats to the entire Concord Police Department. I found this report around 5 years later in the discovery packet when I was being framed for 7 felonies to stop me from getting to the bottom of that exact fraud. How do I have no criminal record, but there are reports claiming that I'm terrorizing the entire police department? They were just building a cache of defamation to use when they inevitably tried to send me to prison if I could not be killed or intimidated, and I could not. I found a list of other reports from Concord, San Francisco, and even San Jose police in that discovery packet. In order to sway the courts and anyone else they need to manipulate, they falsified a slew of reports to create a narrative, but the fact that I have no criminal record tells you how false all these reports are and illustrate the failed effort to make me a real felon. Lastly, I have my final attempts to get the illegal eviction police report from 2013 up to 10 years later. In 2022 and 2023, I was denied still by the Concord Police Department because if I ever see what they falsified, I would have a huge lawsuit and criminal case. Step 2 is how my mother facilitated all of this and gave the police a clear path to carry out their crimes against me. I had a version where I went into my deep family issues, but for brevity's sake, I will tell you my sister molested me, and when it became clear that molesting a naive 9-year-old who doesn't understand what's happening is wrong is a huge risk, she told my mother I was molesting her, even though she was 3 years older and going through puberty that caused her perverse behavior. My father is a shallow, cruel, serial cheater who harasses women to this day in his 70s. One of his side pieces came to the house to confront my mother around the time I was being abused by my sister. My sister showed me my mother's diary where she stated that she could not stand the sight of my face as it reminded her of my father. She took her pain from being cheated out on me. That is my childhood. I had 3 sons in a dysfunctional relationship and had to live with my mother after their mother left. Now my mother abused all of us, and we had to frequent hotels to escape her psychotic anger from being cheated on. There are 1,000 stories to tell on that subject, but that's the gist of it. The police had malware on my phones and computers, as well as a warrant for my phone data, so they know everything about my mother, including how to use her to their advantage. Here is proof of that. I have a witness statement from my mother sharing what she knew of the conspiracy under color of law by the Concord Police Department. It's from 2015 because that's how long she waited to make a statement, 2 years after the 2013 illegal eviction. I also have another statement from her showing she was present at the illegal eviction because the police called her. She knew everything and was present, but it took 2 years for her to say anything. The police knew they could call her and use her and trust she would never speak on what she saw or knew. These statements are when she also got the heavily redacted police report. It took over 700 days to get my mother to help me because she was also abusing my sons, and we were constantly coming back from hotels and other methods of escape. I have witness statements from my sons about her abuse, but I can only share the one from my eldest son who moved out. The other 2 still live with her. They all kept it light because they were scared she would find out. I could tell you way worse stories and my sons would verify them as true. I have a report I made about my parents back in 2016. I was trying to expose my mother's child abuse and concealment of evidence, but my father was all I had left, and he threatened to abandon me if I went after her. In step 3, I rented the home where all this started to escape my mother. I wanted my mother to face charges for child abuse. When the police made allegations of neglect and other felonies against me, it purposely cleared her name and framed me for her transgressions, so she was in full support of what was and is happening to me. Even later, when the police framed me to go to prison to stop me from collecting evidence on what happened in Concord, she still stayed silent, knowing the motive. My mother watched with glee and anticipation, waiting for me to get sent to prison, and did everything she could to see it happen. She concealed the evidence in and out of court when she was the only witness to everything. She wouldn't even present her own witness statements to the court. She refused to do anything to help prove my innocence. Step 3 is when they escalated from intimidation to actual violence. I cannot discuss the 2 attempts to kill me because they were too bizarre and absurd. All I can say is I was supposed to die in a car accident and a scuffle in an elevator. Both methods would have been impossible to prove foul play, as one was a common occurrence and the other was intentionally discreet. I saw them both before they happened, and that's why I'm alive today. I discuss both in my book. This step was my introduction to their capabilities to inflict actual physical damage. This is the first time they physically touched me. A few months after the illegal eviction, I had to make more money because I needed to pay for legal counsel. My mother said we should call John Burris, a famous civil rights attorney, at the illegal eviction in front of the police because I went to high school with his daughter, Monique. The police took that information and twisted it in the report so they could give John Burris a copy by the next morning before I called him. Mind you, I didn't see the report for 2 years, so I didn't understand why he treated me the way that he did. He even smeared me throughout the civil rights legal community, and I got a taste of this defamation from a paralegal I knew that worked with him named Derek Childs. The police had Mr. Childs flaunt this defamation in my face, but that is one of 1,000 stories beyond the scope of this video. My main point here is that when I tried to make money as an Uber driver to pay for counsel, I was assaulted with a deadly weapon. To prove that, I have the police report. where they changed everything to conceal the crime. The lanes we were in, the trajectory of the cars, where the cars ended up. They even added a bus to say that that's what obstructed the view of the criminal driver paid to hit me. Her name was Elizabeth D'Agostino. I have the route that I took and crashed exactly in the middle. It's a printout from my Uber app. I got this trip 2 times back to back because the first time I wasn't lined up correctly, but the second time was clear for Elizabeth D'Agostino to jump out from the intersecting stop sign and cause the crash. Now, mind you, I was going through an intersection, and Elizabeth D'Agostino was waiting at a stop sign. And the moment that I went by, she jumped out in front of me and cut me off and caused a crash. And they've sent me down that road twice because the first time it wasn't like trying to arrange a car crash is complicated. So they needed to do it twice. She was at a dead stop at a stop sign when I came past, and she stomped on the pedal to cut me off so hard that she took my hit on her driver's side and she still kept going through 4 lanes of traffic. And she ended up in a park full of trees. I have an email with my personal injury firm showing a referral to a neurologist. I had to have a catheter to urinate before my bladder almost ruptured, plus other complications. You also see information about a settlement loan on this email. Then I have the drop letter from the personal injury law firm Nadrick and Cohen. Long story short, after I kept collecting evidence and observing my rights after the illegal eviction, and when I tried to make money for counsel after being smeared out of possible representation on contingency, I was taken out by a scheme that required a surreal amount of construction. They got Elizabeth D'Agostino to cause the crash. My passengers who ordered the ride jumped out of the car and fled the scene. They were in an Uber crash where they were due compensation for pain and suffering, but they fled the scene like criminals. They had a man pin my head down and convince me that I'd break my neck if I moved after the accident, but there was a nurse there who said he was holding my head wrong, but he demanded that she go away. He was making sure that I was taken in an ambulance because everyone else got out of the car. He didn't want me to get pictures of the other cars in the trees and in the park after she flew across 4 lanes. They didn't want me to see that there was no bus. They even got an employee from Uber named Jason Fiedler to not only deny me Uber's insurance coverage, but convince me to drop my personal insurance. He told me that in order for me to get Uber's insurance coverage, that I had to drop my own coverage first. I did that, then he disappeared, and I was told by someone on his line to stop calling. I found a clause online stating that Uber drivers have coverage during trips, and that's the only reason I got my car replaced. They even got to my insurance company, the law firm of Nadrick and Cohen, who told me to keep the falsifications on the police report to myself. They also told me to seek a loan in my settlement since I lost my income in the crash. I got offered a $50,000 loan, but I only asked for $9,000 to cover my bills. As soon as I got the loan approved, Nadrick and Cohen dropped my case. They were the ones who told me to seek the loan. They dropped it the very next day after it was approved. The reporting officer to the crash, who falsified every word, Brian Lujan, came into the ambulance after I was strapped in, and he asked me if I was a 49ers fan, and then he left the ambulance. In the report, there's a whole interaction between us about the crash, but it was all he asked me was about the 49ers. Everything else from our interaction in the report was falsified. This was my official introduction into the world that I was entering. Being gang stalked is like living in the Twilight Zone, and this was just the beginning. I spent 3 years living like this. This is when I had the 2 attempts on my life. I was doing a lot of drugs to avoid killing myself. I discussed that in my book. When the police denied my tenant rights and allowed the family to walk all over us and we had to go back to my mother, I wanted to die. I survived everything they did to me, only becoming more determined to prove my case, so now they decided that I needed to go to prison. I decided to make a separate video just talking from memory about 15 or so points that are too crazy for this video, including the 2 attempted murders, a fake informant that they used in police reports, and even the family that they were helping to evict me being known drug addicts and criminals when I had no criminal record. I decided to make a separate video discussing these points because I didn't want to ramble too much in this video. I survived one attempt by pure miracle, one attempt on my life by a pure miracle. This video doesn't even do the story justice. I barely escaped prison by a miracle. That is fully documented. Here in this video, I will show you the 3 times they tried to avoid trial because they had fabricated evidence that I exposed. The crimes I'm about to get into are far beyond anything one would think was possible without the proof that I show here. This step is how they set me up for prison in the first place. They used vandalism to provoke me, then the opportunity for an illegal trick called a parallel construction arose. That's when you provoke your target into a crime, and then when they take the bait and commit said crime, you fabricate more crimes and evidence so that the suspect can't escape the charges without at least one conviction on one count. Real or not, it doesn't matter as long as there is a conviction. To prove this, my evidence is I have the vandalism of 3 separate vehicles. I have tons of pictures of the 3 separate vehicles that were vandalized, 2 scooters and a car. And mind you, this is after they already destroyed the brand new vehicle in the Uber crash. The destruction and vandalism of all 4 vehicles, plus the next one I discussed, makes 5, all in under 3 years. They vandalized or destroyed 5 cars in under 3 years. The end of 2013 to mid-2016. I have a few of my subscriptions for the pain and anxiety I was dealing with at that time, showing that I was unstable, and my public records show this vulnerability, which was precisely targeted. I have the 3rd, not the 1st or the 2nd, but the 3rd act of vandalism on the 5th vehicle. An A-frame parking sign was placed on its side in a blind spot after one of my DoorDash deliveries. The details are in my book, but it was placed there moments before by the group of white women who jumped out of the car laughing and literally pulling on the sign to see how far it penetrated into my bumper. I have my text message to Darren Chan, who caught this all on his Ring cam, and he offered to send me the video. The police got to him before he sent it, and he edited it to conceal the footage just before the crash, and he refused to show what happened. And this kind of proves that they were monitoring and stalking me, because how did they even know that I was in contact with Darren Chan? Don't go off on tangents. Okay. I have a picture. The police got to him before he sent it, and then he edited the footage to conceal the footage just before the crash, and he refused to show it because it would have showed them setting up the crash. I have a picture of the first of the 3 acts of vandalism on that same car. That car was vandalized 3 different times, and that's how they provoked me into making threats and setting me up for prison. The first act, my driver's side window was pried out and fake blood was smeared all over my hood. I believe it was supposed to look like a biker hit my car, but when the blood dried, it clearly wasn't blood, and I could see the marks where my window was pried out of the housing. Like, you could see that it was pried out with like a screwdriver. The second incident was a psychological abuse tactic called street theater. My car door was dented and scratched by another person opening their car door, and the person both denied it and caused a huge scene in public. I had to play along and get into a public fight or let it go. I chose the latter. I have more correspondence with Darren Chan, pleading with him to share the full video. I have the stalking evidence and the police and Darren Chan fabricated after I began threatening him. This was the additional charge and evidence that they added after I allowed the vandalism and cover-up to provoke me into making threats against Darren. That is the parallel construction that they set up. I have the shoes that I owned that they tried to match in the stalking video. This is huge, as it ultimately ruined their entire case because it proved they produced the video and tried to dress their actors similarly to me. I have my mugshot claiming I am a stalker with the history of threats against the police. They ignored the threats against Darren Chan, the real charges, and focused on the fake stalking charge and the fraudulent major crimes unit report that they also made up, claiming I was threatening the whole department. I have 2 court records where Darren Chan and the police claim that I admit to being the stalker because I admitted to wearing black and white Nikes. The Nikes I had were limited edition Air Max, and I had a backwards swoosh. So the basic black and white Nikes that their actor had and their focus on black and white shoes and the interrogation proved that all they cared about was tying me to their fake video by their brand and shoe color, failing to acknowledge the details that ruined their plans. I have my text requesting contact info for the police Darren was talking to. They chose not to contact me and to raid my father's apartment complex for no reason. They even went to the wrong apartment and handcuffed my father's neighbor to spread my bad reputation and persuade my father to kick me out and make things even harder for me. So I already have to convince people that I was set up in a car crash in San Francisco by multiple parties to stop me from exposing an illegal eviction in Concord. Now I have 5 vandalized and destroyed vehicles. I'm framed for prison, and my response to the systematic vandalism of the 5th and final vehicle and the acts of vandalism include a parking sign planted sideways in my front bumper, fake blood in it from a staged biking accident, and damage incurred during street theater. One of the main priorities of gang stalking is to be absurd, unbelievable, and render targets to be deemed incredible. That is why they commit crimes like the one I just presented. So the victim, who is already an isolated person known to use drugs, has to present circumstances that are utterly ridiculous, but at the same time, they're on the verge of committing suicide from the truth of it. After these 3 acts of vandalism disguised as accidents, and the concealment of the footage I was offered successfully provoking me into threatening Darren, the police produced a video of someone pretending to be me stalking Darren. I was now facing 7 felony charges, 6 felony threats, and 1 felony stalking charge. There's a crazy kidnapping story to add before I proceed. I was in jail for 12 hours after turning myself in, waiting for my bail to process. When I got out, I was starving. I was concerned the police would piss in or poison my food there. I had my father follow me home as it was clear I was in danger. We both underestimated the danger. The police were already following my father, following me. I pulled into the Jack in the Box a mile from his apartment. He went on home, and the second he left my sight, I was lit up. The Alameda police, who had nothing to do with anything, were following instructions to take me back to jail and tow my car by way of some clerical error that they staged. They were, by definition, kidnapping me. I knew it and called my father before I got out of the car. He returned before they could take me or my car, so they had to let me and my car go. There could be no witnesses. The next day, my father and I went to the Alameda Police Department, and they said that it never happened. So at this point, both my mother and father know that I am a victim of police misconduct to the level of kidnapping and conspiracy, but they both will say nothing, not a single solitary word throughout the next 6 years I spent fighting the false charges from the same police. My parents' response to all of this lowered my self-esteem to the point it was hard to keep fighting. If not for the drugs I was using, I would have committed suicide for sure. Step 5 is real short and simple. I was set up and they had fabricated evidence. I came to my preliminary hearing representing myself. I brought an affidavit on gang stalking from a retired FBI agent, amongst other documents. The judge refused to read the affidavit and demanded that I organize my exhibits by number over the lunch break. I was nervous about getting back from lunch in time, so I mistakenly did it by letters. I organized my document by letters instead of numbers. Judge Edward Torporco said that between my bad attitude and my inability to follow instructions, I needed to be evaluated for mental illness. That meant that I was to be arrested then and there and to be held in county jail for months awaiting a doctor to evaluate me. If I passed, I go home. If I fail, I get transferred to a correctional mental facility for 3 years. After I was taken away, I heard Judge Torporco say that was easy, and everyone laughed. They planned this, and even though they didn't have a valid cause, they followed through. I have the court records for the hearing where I was remanded into custody. This was the first effort to have me committed for persecutory delusions. If you Google gang stalking, the internet lists it as a mental illness, as if it's all in the victim's head. We must endure not only the crimes, but the denial of their existence while they take everything piece by piece. I think you can clearly see that this is a real protocol with real power and real victims. I was allowed to pass my psychological evaluation because I was so rattled by the prospect of being committed that I was no longer willing to represent myself any further. As long as the court had a public defender on my case, they controlled my destiny. With a public defender, they don't need a reason to have me committed. I show that here. In step 6, they tried a second time to have me committed. They assumed that I was so scared from what just happened that could get me to take a detrimental plea deal. I would either accept it or go to jail and be committed this time. Sounds impossible and absurd in this day and age, but they did just that without concern or consequence. Without concern or consequence. I have my email from Public Defender John Kamen. He has an offer from the district attorney. They won't put me back in jail if I plead guilty to the one stalking charge. So basically, they will let me go on all six threat charges that I was guilty of if I plead guilty to the fabricated stalking charge to clear them of their fraud. I have John Kamen's response letter after I completely ignored him. He is telling me that I have to return to mental health court where he knew I would be arrested and reevaluated. I have the fraudulent diagnosis by Dr. Hugh Molesworth after I was arrested. It states that I do not accept responsibility and claim to have made up a defense that proves I am delusional. He was allowed to have me committed based on his disbelief of my defense. And I don't think he disbelieved it. It was all planned. I asked this doctor, Dr. Hugh Molesworth, what evidence did John Kamen present to the court to back his claims to have me sent back to mental health court? Because John Kamen told the judge that he had 20 documents proving that I was delusional. Dr. Hugh Molesworth said that John Kamen gave nothing to the courts. So first, the court had me arrested and tried to commit me for defending and representing myself. When I allowed a public defender back on my case, they demand I take a plea deal, and they have me arrested and committed for demanding a trial instead. All of this was done with no verification of any mental illness. I lost all of my rights and was deemed incompetent. I am quite possibly the only person to ever overturn a criminal incompetence diagnosis without an attorney. I did it by tricking John Kamen into exposing himself. The details of that are in my book. I'll probably discuss it in my other video. It took me 5 months to devise a way to be released. The first time it took 1 month to get out. So I spent half a year being tortured with wrongful imprisonment as an effort to have me committed. I had 6 different public defenders, and they all tried one way or another to have me convicted or committed. This was not even the end of that insane agenda. Step 7. After they failed to end my case by way of incompetence, they decided to find another way to avoid facing a jury with their fabricated evidence. They just needed to get me into a non-jury trial with a judge of their choosing to convict me. This is how that went down. I have the first email with public defender Alexandria Carl, seeming like a normal defense attorney. The very next month, I have her in emails frantic after being caught trying to have me convicted in a surprise, illegal non-jury trial. I have financial documents I sent to her proving I could afford a real attorney so she could just get off my case if she wasn't there, if she was there to trick me. She said she wasn't and remains on my case. I have the parking meter receipt from the day the court tricked me into leaving the courtroom so that they could schedule the illegal non-jury trial. I arrived just after 9 a.m. My second parking meter receipt shows that I had to refill it at the 2-hour limit when it was reached. In 6 years, this never happened. I was always in and out before 2 hours came. I have the document from Lyft stating that I was fired after they found a felony trial on my public record. Lyft does random background checks, and they just so happened to do a random background check right after the court tried to have me convicted in the surprise trial. So basically, Lyft doing the random check and firing me saved my life. I would be in prison, forced to spend the rest of my life as a felon if this didn't happen as it did. It was a miracle. I have court records showing all 7 charges on my case, but in the public documents that Lyft got, there was no stalking charge. This means that they not only planned a surprise non-jury trial, but they planned on leaving out the stalking charge because the evidence was proven to be staged. So they were going to not only make a fake trial, but they were going to make it easier for themselves by removing their falsified evidence. I have rejections from the Bar Association and the Commission on Judicial Performance, where I tried to report Judge Braden Woods and Alexandria Carl for this illegal trick to convict me. I was so lucky to survive the attempts to kill me. It was also unbelievable and damn near divine intervention to have that random Lyft background check warn me of the illegal trial they planned. My attorney, Alexandria Carl, would not tell me who was standing in as the acting district attorney when this illegal trial was scheduled after I left to refill my meter. I paid for the transcripts. Somehow they did not show them scheduling the trial. That was on my record, but they did give me the name of the acting district attorney. Brittany Delgado was the district attorney who helped them schedule this illegal trial. So it was Judge Braden Woods was the public defender Alexandria Carl, and district attorney Brittany Delgado were the three people who tried to send me to prison with a fake trial, non-jury surprise trial. Step 8. So that was it. After the illegal surprise trial failed, they gave up. They had me dead to rights, and there was nothing in the way of me going to prison. I wish I could have seen the look on their faces when they found out that the trial got exposed by me losing my job. They had me, and there was nothing that could have saved me but just that random thing that happened. There was no way to avoid moving forward to a jury trial. Just like the police in Concord could not allow this to get to a housing court, which is why they illegally evicted me, the criminal court could not allow this to go before a jury. I was fighting for my family and demanding my date in housing court for a month when I was illegally evicted by force to avoid it. Now I have been fighting 6 years for my trial date to prove I was set up for prison to stop me from proving the illegal eviction. After trying to have me committed and or convicted through crime, they just dropped all charges with no reason given. Again, they just needed to avoid the actual scrutiny of a legitimate trial on the matter. In the end, they succeeded with the eviction and the criminal charges. In the end, they succeeded with the eviction, and the criminal charges were also a success. A conviction was always the intent, but the purpose of the charges was to stop me from pursuing the illegal eviction, and in that they were clearly successful. I have my supplemental motion and declaration in support, to prove this in step 8. I have my supplemental motion and, it's a court filing that I filed as my own attorney. It's called a supplemental motion and declaration in support of motion to dismiss, and I filed it pro per as my own attorney. It's a complicated document aimed at verifying my evidence to use in trial. I used a template to create my own. I have my email to the last prosecutor, Rebecca Wagner, letting her know that I would whip her in trial, and she tried to have me arrested for this email. I have the judge's order of case dismissed at his own discretion, as there was no path forward. They had a confident, prepared defendant/attorney with an abundance of exculpatory evidence, a fraudulent stage stalking charge, and a thick history of trying to avoid trial. They had no choice but to drop it after 6 years of malicious prosecution. I have an email from Rob Guzman, the lead prosecutor, threatening me with further prosecution for threatening Rebecca Wagner with post-trial legal action. I have my response telling him how laughable it was and to go ahead and do it. They took their victory and walked away without pursuing me further. Now, I honestly thought that I would be able to sue and press charges on these people. It took a few days of making phone calls to realize that the whole point of the charges was to stop me from pursuing the Concord Police Department. The charges were just a possible extra injury, but as long as I lost my ability to pursue the illegal eviction, it was a success. They won even though they lost, and I was still a target and a victim of incessant crime. Step 9, they had to make sure I couldn't file civil suits and ensure I remained generally unstable. They even found a way to affect my journey to sobriety after the charges, as I no longer had a demand for unnatural confidence and stamina through drugs. Even though I was still a target, I could slow down. Over the next couple of years, everything that I did led to failure and loss. For example, I have Joe Horton from Judiciary Process Servers trying to avoid texting and instructing me to call him after stealing my money and sabotaging my civil suits against Concord and San Francisco. I always request scammers to communicate with me in writing, and they always resist. I have an email asking him to serve my papers as I paid for that, but he refused for no given reason. I have a text where Joe Horton admits to giving me affidavits of service and not proofs of service, and he blocks me afterwards, successfully stealing my money, $400, to no benefit to himself beyond completing whatever instructions given to him by police. Affidavits and proofs of service are the exact same thing, only affidavits are not the correct form accepted by the court, and any process server knows that like the back of his hand. He simply provided the wrong document, so I could not move forward with my cases. I have my final attempt to get my medical records from Melissa Basbas at John George Hospital. I went there when I tried to get sober after my case. I went cold turkey on drugs, and my depression and anxiety just almost killed me. They ignored me and refused to even talk to me, and they held me in isolation for 2 days. I spent months trying to get my medical records stating their analysis after imprisoning me without counsel, but I was denied at every turn. The way that they ignored me from the start and denied my records in the end is unheard of, and again, it doesn't benefit anyone. Like, there was no point in doing it outside of them having instructions from someone. I have photos from my car windows being smashed, my 6th vandalized vehicle, the only car out of dozens on a busy lakeshore strip, and my phone and my AirPods were in the front seat where they were unharmed. My completely blacked out and impossible to see through at night trunk window was smashed at night when you can't see through it, and the only thing that was taken was $100 worth of copies from when I went to Kinko's to prepare my court records, like my complaints and my summons. You have to make hella copies and hole punch them a certain way. You have to, like, there's a lot of preparation that goes into court papers, and I had to make so many copies and prepare them. And after I spent hours doing that and spent about $100 at Kinko's, somebody picked my car out of 100 and smashed my window just to steal my court papers. I was forced to serve my documents through the sheriff's department, the civil division, and they also sabotaged my documents, and that's also in my book. So basically I was unable to sue because everywhere I went to get help, or, because you can't do everything by yourself. You have to go through people, you have to use services, but nobody would provide me any services, so I wasn't able to sue. I have pictures of my public storage unit that was broken into and left by staff. Despite daily lock checks, my unit was allowed to remain accessible to anyone for months. I did not realize how easy it was until I tried to open it while it was still locked. Public storage has a sticker system where they verify each unit daily, and they put a sticker on it to verify that everything is secure. And there was no sticker on my unit, and it wasn't checked for months, and mine was the only one. I literally walked throughout the whole facility, and my unit was the only one that was left unlocked, or that wasn't verified that it was locked. I applied for a job there, so I know exactly how their system works. I have a text message with HR and management from a wrongful termination to stop me from finishing the book that has these documents. The details of that are also in my book. And there are more stories and more details about everything. It's all in my book. But that's what happened after I beat my case. These are just some of the crimes that I faced. This is just some of what I faced after court. The last step is actually kind of my fault. I was rear-ended during a pileup on the freeway, and I knew that I had to deal directly with the insurance company to get any compensation. I already knew what would happen if I contacted an attorney. Well, I got caught by one of those law firms that puts their number in an ad that looks like the insurance company, like you think you're calling the insurance company, and then a law firm answers. I Googled and searched the company after hearing their pitch, and there were no red flags. After having judges and prosecutors and my own defense attorneys trying to trick me into prison and permanently destroy my life without even knowing me, I was still desperate enough to believe I could get help from just one person that I accepted representation. This is not in my book, as it is a current situation that is happening now. The accident was in March, I believe. The firm ignored the severe wrist pain that I reported a few days after the crash, and the chiropractor that they sent me to had no impact on my recovery. I was in therapy through June, where I requested it to end because it was pointless and it wasn't helping me at all. I had to endure so many insults and belittling statements from the law firm when I talked to them on the phone that by July, just like with Joe Horton from Judiciary Process Servers, I decided to never talk to them on the phone, so all their insults and jokes will be recorded on our text thread. After initially having correspondence on text, they all of a sudden refused to respond to my texts for months at a time, to the point where I had to ask them if they dropped my case. I have here 2 texts on my phone here I have here 2 texts from October 7th and December 21st. I don't want to show their number and get this video flagged, but on October 7th, after ignoring me for over a month, they say that they will have their negotiations team reach out as some sort of joke that they thought I was too dumb to catch. Law firms don't have negotiations teams. They were patronizing me. I asked them who was on this team and who is the lead, like a normal question seeking validation, and they ignored me again until mid-December, where they say I rejected a $10,000 offer, and that's why I haven't been paid yet. So not only are they making up imaginary departments like a negotiation team, but they are also lying as if I spoke to this imaginary team and making decisions on my case. $10,000 is what I would have demanded without an attorney. You don't need representation and a year of negotiation for a $10,000 settlement. I accepted the settlement to get out of the abusive contract. The long story short is the only reason that they settled for anything in the first place was because they know that I am posting this video, and they just got caught in a lie that they thought I was too dumb to catch. That's why they are trying to clean it up with the next text acting like we talked and I delayed my own settlement. Like, it's like they aren't even concerned with me, and they're just trying to make the text thread look better when other people see it. They were going to try and pay me nothing, the same as the law firm Nadrick and Cohen from the Uber crash, who just randomly dropped my case after acquiring the loan they told me to get. Something like this was coming up for sure. That's exactly what was going to happen. But I explained to them that I was going to expose this entire situation online, and they still ignored me, but they eventually popped up and made this very low offer. Why would a law firm do this? I didn't even call them, and they had their ads set up so people contact them by mistake, and they sell their services suggesting maximum payout, massage therapy, and other services that I never received. Standard baiting aside, which I assume many law firms do, why are they lying to me and making things up on our text thread and offering me the smallest settlement they could reasonably offer, while refusing to answer any questions about my case for an entire year? The two texts, the lie about the negotiations team and the follow-up lie about me turning down their insulting offer, is all a part of an agenda that is basic malpractice offered in confusing, absurd actions no one but they fully understand. That is why I accepted my loss, accepted the $10,000, and moved on with my life. I'm still waiting to be paid. So, really quick rundown. Number one, the illegal eviction, the Concord police covered up all the evidence that I got. I wanted charges and lawsuits, and that's how I was put on the gang stalking list, because I posed a threat to a government entity. Number two, my mother was abusing my sons. That's why I was in Concord, and when the police learned about my mother, they were able to use her falsely in police reports to support their narrative and use her silence just the same, because it was the only thing that could have exposed the illegal eviction and the falsified criminal charges. The police and my mother had a beneficial relationship that served the same purpose: conceal their own crimes using each other's fraud. Number three, the police tried to intimidate, injure, and kill me. Their propensity and skill in the violent side of organized crime was made clear by the accident with the Uber passengers. Number four, after I survived high-level operations that all failed to deter me, I was set up for prison in a parallel construction. I laid it all out. Number five, to avoid facing a jury, the court tried to scare me away from representing myself. They tried to have me committed. Number six, when I continued to speak the truth, they did have me committed, but I outsmarted the system and had it overturned. Number seven, when having me committed failed, just like killing me and breaking me into submission with violence, the entire court, my attorney, the judge, and the prosecutor colluded to schedule an illegal non-jury trial, but a chance coincidence ruined that plot. That was when Lyft fired me and alerted me to their scheme. Number eight, they could not avoid facing a jury, so they gave up trying to convict me and accepted the fact that they were able to get me. Number eight, they could not avoid facing a jury, so they gave up trying to convict me and accepted the fact that they were able to get me off the Concord Police's case regarding the illegal eviction. Even though this is all the same criminal conspiracy, I haven't proved any of it to anyone yet. After they dropped the charges, the illegal eviction was 9 years old. That was the true purpose of the charges, to make the illegal eviction old news. Number nine, the continued assault after I had the charges dropped, attacking every move that I made. Number 10, even now the police are the ones that persuaded RA and associates to engage in psychological abuse in the form of insurance fraud that I am currently facing. There was a $25,000 limit on the other party's policy. It was a small case. My most extreme injury was ignored. I was ignored. I was lied to. Even when I was given the offer, I was lied to, where I showed you that they claimed I rejected $10,000. I should have, but after I realized that they ignored my greatest pain and the chiropractor that they sent me to was so worthless that I stopped going after 3 months, it wasn't really worth arguing in court. My claim was structured by my attorney to be worthless by offering no real guidance or medical attention for the entire year it took to negotiate a $10,000 settlement. The level of service, the lack of access, and turnout to the smallest settlement, to the smallest settlement that they could reasonably offer, is the exact opposite of what you get an attorney for, and there is no explanation for their service. Nothing to gain, no personal vendetta served, just the assurance that an incident and settlement goes from a just and beneficial compensation to another chapter in the nightmare that I'm trapped in. I need to be super clear. This insurance fraud, all the crimes that I dealt with for 2 years after I got the charges dropped, the 6 years I spent facing false charges, the 3 years I spent facing attempted murder for collecting the evidence from the police and district attorney, the illegal eviction, even my mother's child abuse and desire to cover it up by facilitating the crimes by the police. My mother could have exposed the illegal eviction, and both my parents could have disrupted the malicious prosecution, exposing its motives by sharing how they witnessed me get kidnapped and plotted on over tenancy. All of this is just one act of conspiracy under color of law, a group of people using their positions in law enforcement and criminal justice to cover their crimes and the crimes of those whose agendas align with theirs. The point of this video was to prove that. The focus on my mental health and the dedicated efforts by judges, attorneys, and police to not only build that narrative, but to have an innocent, competent man committed and forced to take drugs until he accepts not really their narrative, but their power to establish their narrative over and above the truth, enhances this matter and almost demands prison for everyone involved. I know I'm just a poor black man with mental health issues and low self-esteem, but that's why I made this video. There's the reason. That's why I did it. I have a companion video I'm about to shoot. There's about 14 or 15 things too crazy to bring up here without changing the pace and the vibe of the video. This video took me about 2 months of editing and completely redoing this because we are talking about a government-funded psychological operation. This is just a fraction of it. I tried to fit the whole story in a 400-page book, but even that is missing some occurrences. Instead of writing a script, I'm just talking about them off memory. I'm not telling a story, just going over random incidents. I'm not torturing myself and avoiding my sons no more, developing a script. I can't be around anyone when I'm going over this, and I've been really completely isolated for about 2 months, or really almost 13 years, because the only people I really know now are my sons. I got to work on my social skills. I believe, but I need a free brain space to be able to do that. Hopefully after I post and spread these videos, I can find that space to work on myself. If you are intrigued by what you've heard here, I can guarantee you the companion video will verify that what you heard here is not only true, but a whole different side to this life we live that most people will never see, fortunately. I hope that nobody experiences what I experienced. I thank you for watching, and please share this, especially with somebody that you think can help. I need legal, financial, and psychological counseling. I have so much potential in all 3 areas, but they all are currently fully devastated just the same. I have the character and the content for great success in all these areas if I had a lead to follow. I have strong evidence. I make $100,000 a year at 2 jobs, and I still have a very strong grip on reality. Like a sane person, I am aware of my mental weaknesses. I just have been misled legally by everyone. I never really understood money, and I'm very certain that I suffer from an aggravated level of PTSD that affects every single thing that I do. I believe that all these things can be fixed, but only if I get the help that I need. And that's why I made this video, asking for that help. Thank you so very much.